Hello and welcome to the very last of our SeptembRSE sessions. I cannot believe that the month has gone by so quickly and we're already here right at the end. So without further ado, what we have this afternoon is we're going to have a wonderful keynote talk by Lucy, which is going to be on publishing your software project with the Journal of Open Source Software. And that's going to be followed by my wrap-up talk, where I'm going to go through my highlights of the week. Thanks to everybody who's involved and behind the scenes peeking at what goes on into organising a conference. And of course, I think the thing people have been waiting for, the prizes. So the Oracle Poster Prize, Cryptic Code Treasure Hunt Prize, and of course the Moose, which have been flying out the door. But, I don't want to delay Lucy any further. So Lucy, over to you for your promoted keynote talk.
Hello, everyone. Hello, and thank you for having me. Yeah, so my name's Lucy Worley, and I'm going to be talking today about publishing your software project with the Journal of Open Source Software. So before I get stuck into the presentation itself, I wanted to thank the organisers of this conference. It's been for putting together such a jam-packed schedule. I'm very pleased we can play catch up on YouTube because there really has been so much going on this month. And one thing that struck me, when watching the talks is just that the RSE community is really quite different from other more maybe traditional academic communities I've been involved with, because we're really good at tackling the questions on a small scale, so the nitty-gritty of how does this tool work, but also then the questions on a really big scale as well, the systematic questions, like what do we want this community to look like in 10 years' time? So we're able to work, at both these length scales. And I think it's important, we do all this work and this deep thinking, and it's really important that we get credit for it, right? And this is, I know other people have been, talking a lot about this. This is a really important issue for us at the moment. So yeah, how do we get our golden eggs? So I've got Jack and the Beanstalk here. How do we get our golden eggs after putting in all this hard work? And that's a little bit, that touches on what I'm going to be speaking today about. So first of all, I'll just introduce myself. So I'm a research fellow at Northumbria University, and my research uses computational material science, high performance computing, and software development. I'm also a Software Sustainability Institute 2019 fellow. I'm actually still in my fellowship period, thanks to the pandemic and some parental leave. And I've really enjoyed being a fellow. I think that the 2022 fellowships are now open, so I'd encourage anyone who might be interested in applying to that to do so. I'm also an ex-teacher in schools and colleges, and this was my way into the RSE community. It was getting involved with software carpentry and teaching software carpentry. So I'm often kind of wearing my educator's hat when I'm thinking about RSE. And RSE activities. And finally, for full disclosure, I am now a topic editor for the Journal of Open Source Software. So I actually wasn't when I wrote this abstract, but since then I have become a topic editor. And so, yeah, I might be a little bit biased towards that journal. Right. So in today's talk, what I want to do is I want to persuade you that, pardon me, I want to persuade you that publishing your software in a peer-reviewed journal is a good idea and that it's possible to do this without too much hassle. And I'm going to make an assumption which I think most people here are going to be on board with, which is that research software is a valid research output and that the authors of that software should receive appropriate credit. So yes, I'm going to be focusing, because of course there's many ways we can publish software, right? One of those is in a peer-reviewed journal. That's what I'm going to be primarily focusing on today. One of the first questions we can ask then is, why is it that we publish any research output in journals? And I've come up here with just 3 reasons. The first is to increase the visibility of our work. This is maybe less so now that we're in the age of preprint servers and Twitter. We can do a lot to promote our own work in these, informal ways. But I still think software journals, do a lot to promote and share our work through academic networks. The second reason, which is a biggie, is it can quantify our contribution through, for example, citation counts. And of course, this is a very imperfect way of trying to measure our contribution, but it's, it still is in the current system a big reason for publishing our outputs in journals. And the third reason is that the peer review process should lead to better quality output. And again, it might not always feel like that. It can often feel a little bit like, like combat, basically. But it should, in theory, this peer review process lead to better results, to a better paper, to a better piece of software. Okay, so if we can get these benefits from publishing in journals, why is it that we don't always publish our code in journals? And personally, I think the main reason for this is because basically the publishers have not kept up with the way that science has evolved and that research has evolved. So in 1665, if you wanted to publish your research, you could do so in a journal using text and images, and it would be printed onto paper. And today, 400 years on, if you want to publish your work, then in the vast majority of cases, we publish it as text and static images, but now in PDF format. But really, as James Somers says, the basic means of communicating scientific results hasn't changed for 400 years. It hasn't kept up with the evolution of computational science and computational research. But there are other ways that we've developed to share our code and to publish our code. And I've listed them here in a table. So what I've tried to do here is I've tried to, so down on this table, so each row lists a publishing method. And then each column, I've tried to come up with some criteria. So for example, can you get a citation with this publishing method? Do you get peer review? So is the software itself peer reviewed? Is there a journal publication at the end of it? And is it time efficient? Because I think rightly so, a lot of people are concerned, well, if I'm working as an RSE, should I be spending a load of time writing papers for academic journals? Right, so one of the ways that we can publish code is by putting it on a public repo, so putting it onto GitHub or similar, and then using a citation file. And I know that lots of people, within the Society for Research Software Engineers have developed this citation file format to allow that more easily to happen. And of course, using this method, we can then cite that software. Using this method alone without plugging into other communities doesn't enable peer review. You don't get a journal publication from it, but it is incredibly time efficient. Another option for publishing our work would be to share it within a community, a peer review community. So here I'm thinking of things like rOpenSci or PyOpenSci. So these are communities of people who you can submit your work to them, and then it will go through a peer review process. And this, if you include a citation file, so you can get a citation, using this method. You also get a peer review. You don't get a kind of a formal journal publication from that. But again, it's time efficient because it's not requiring you to do a lot of work beyond, the standard expectations of good software, writing documentation for that software and testing that software. Okay, one of the third options for sharing our code might be, and this is something I've played around with personally, is to have an executable paper, so something like a Jupyter notebook, as supplementary information. So including a Jupyter notebook alongside a more traditional academic paper. And in this case, well, people could cite that traditional academic paper that, the notebook accompanied, but you normally, unless you're very lucky, you wouldn't normally get that supplementary information peer reviewed. They'd be concentrating on the traditional paper itself. You would get a journal publication, and it is quite time efficient. Right, but of course this only works if you've got, a kind of if you're going to publish something in a traditional journal anyway. So this isn't going to be applicable for a lot of people. Right, another option is just to publish it in a journal that is aimed at the computational sciences, in a software journal as a full-length paper. And then you get a citation, but you won't always get the actual software reviewed. They'll be reviewing the paper itself that describes the software, the full-length paper. And for this reason, I've put that it's not time efficient, because you've got to spend all your time mapping your software onto a full-length paper and describing the functioning of the software. And that's what you get peer-reviewed, other than the software itself. So the final option, which is the option I'm going to talk about today, is this workaround where we have a software meta paper. So we write a much shorter paper, maybe 2-page paper, that describes very briefly the functioning of the software. And that is then published in a journal. So you get a journal publication for it, you get a citation for it. The review process is centered on the software itself. So the software is getting reviewed, and it's time efficient because, as you'll see for the Journal of Open Source Software, it should only take about an hour or two to write that software paper, because it's incredibly light touch. It's kind of it's a shortcut in this imperfect system. It's a hack, basically, in this imperfect system, so that we can get all the benefits of publishing. Okay, and I just want to point out that there is a list of software journals that is maintained by the Software Sustainability Institute. So I've provided a link to that there. Right, okay, so I also want to mention something which wasn't on the list of wasn't mentioned in any of that criteria on the previous slide, and this kind of relates to, I want to say, the emotional benefits, the less tangible benefits of publishing our software. And to do so, I'm going to give a case study, and it's my own personal experience. And this is from publishing fmass.py. So this was my first research software project. And fmass calculates the effective mass of electrons, but really the details there aren't important. Now, I wrote this in 2016, and it was a complete mess, basically. It was my first project, and as you can imagine, it was a bit of a mess. I submitted it, or I heard about the Journal of Open Source Software, and this really catalyzed me into making a lot of improvements, so that in 2018, instead of it being a complete nest, I now had nice modular code, which was garnished with documentation and testing. So yes, so in 2016, it was in a private, fmass was in a private GitHub repo. It had the functionality I needed for my own data analysis, but it had no testing or documentation. Then in 2018, I refactored it, I made it public. I implemented testing, continuous integration, documentation, and now it has 6 contributors, not a huge amount, but for a very domain-specific piece of software, I'm very, very happy with that. And it's had quite a lot of downloads and a few citations. So I think this is kind of quite a common path for people. And really what I want to highlight is just how much submitting FMAS, hearing about this journal, the Journal of Open Source Software, and submitting to the journal, how much it transformed the way that I look at software. So first of all, I used the review criteria of the journal as a curriculum for self-directed learning. The fact that I was going to get a publication at the end of it meant that it really justified the time spent on learning new skills around documentation and testing and packaging. And finally, the peer review process, so having to put my code out there for other people to look at, it really forced me to share my code, and it really built my confidence. And yes, I think this was a really positive story, and I just want to emphasize how much that these journals might have a role to play in building people's confidence and in guiding their own development. And as if you are working as an RSE, then it might be, it could potentially be a nice way to scaffold, the supporting academics who are at the start of their journey in using and developing research software. So I'm now going to focus a little bit more on JOS. I think I've only got 5 minutes left, so I'll have to do it a little bit quickly. So JOS wants to make it as easy as possible for people, as easy as possible to write a software paper. So the paper itself should take less than an hour preparing it, or maybe an hour or two to prepare it. And it's open access with no publishing charge. The scope of the journal is that it takes open source software that has an obvious research application, and it results from a substantial scholarly effort. So as a rule of thumb, about 3 months minimum. The JOS paper is short. It describes the high-level functionality for a non-specialist audience. It includes a statement of need, and it doesn't need to contain any novel results. The review process is really quite different because it's based on GitHub. It reviews the software itself, and we're really going for a dialogue. So it's an open collaboration between author, editor, reviewers, and the JOS bot. So the JOS bot is there to basically automate as much as possible, to automate the labor-intensive tasks that are associated with reviewing and editing. And this bot is really quite general purpose now. So it's been used elsewhere for review management. So it's been used for rOpenSci, PyOpenSci, and for the proceedings of the Julia Con. And I've got here a screenshot. You might not be able to make out the text so clearly, but I've got a screenshot here just highlighting some of the roles of the editorial bot. So the bot is called WeDone here, and it can automatically detect the programming language, and it automatically compiles the paper that's been submitted. And it has other functions beyond this also. Now, JOS has definitely shown that there's a gap in the market for this type of journal, and that's shown by the growth in the papers that are submitted. Last year in 2020, the 1,000th paper was published. And yeah, there is this kind of strong growth. So I think I'm getting to the end now, just in time. JOS is one of many long overdue developments in software publishing. So I don't, this is not the only journal that's trying to do this. I know that there's also the Journal of Open Research Software as well. And then, as I've mentioned before, there's communities for peer review like PyOpenSci, rOpenSci. There's PLOS are doing a lot of kind of work in publishing computational sciences, and there's also an interesting initiative called ReScience, which looks at reproducing computational results. The other thing I mentioned earlier was the possibility of using review checklists as a teaching and learning tool, because, personally, I found that really useful for structuring my learning. And as a final note, if you write software, then publish it. If you use software, then definitely cite it. And if you do either of the above, then please come and review for JOS. We are always on the lookout for new reviewers. Okay, so thank you to the Software Sustainability Institute for my fellowship funding, to Jeremy Cohen, who's acted as an informal mentor for my fellowship period, to the JOS authors, reviewers, editors, yes, to EPSRC and to developers and maintainers of the Python SciPy ecosystem. And thank you for watching.
Thank you very much, Lucy, and definitely a round of applause for me. That was a really great talk. And yeah, JOS is fantastic. I've published one paper already in there, and it's surprisingly useful to interact with Wedden. Really, really clever idea. And I can see lots of applause appearing in the chat. Okay, I'm going to share some questions because lots have come up. So just 2 secs. There we are. There we are, and some more even coming up as I'm sort of like typing. So I'm going to go through in order of voting. So let's go for the top one here. So out of the two, what do you think is the most important? Having peer review for that community stamp of quality, or getting the citation for discoverability?
I think it really depends on the person and where their priorities lie. For me personally, at the stage that I'm at, which is, relatively early career, and definitely, when I published my paper with JOS, the FMAS, the peer review was the most important aspect for me, because it really did improve the software, and it really did build my confidence, which I think is quite rare for a peer review process. But it did both of those things. But I guess for some people, the stage they're at, it might be more important to get a citation. So yeah, I think it really depends on the person.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I agree as well. This is the thing I found most different, was it was a conversation rather than a peer review. So it wasn't like you're rejected. It was this sort of like iterative thing that was just so much nicer than any other journal experience I'd had.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does feel much more like a team effort rather than, I think I said in the talk, more like kind of, it can feel a bit like combat in some of the more traditional journals.
Yeah, that's a good phrase. It is a team effort. Okay, so next question. How do academics view these sorts of publications? Do you think they consider them to be of similar value to a conventional paper?
My feeling is it's very domain specific. So I work in computational material science, and I did my PhD in a very, kind of prestigious group, an Imperial, very well respected group. And the PI there was very on board with JOS, and would absolutely, if he had an application from a postdoc with a JOS, with a JOS publication, I know that he would look very favorably on that, because it would show to him a certain level of a certain standard. Now, there are other academics who I think are just not, they've not come across JOS. They don't understand the purpose of JOS. And so to them, they'd be looking for an impact factor. They'd be thinking, well, I've never heard of that journal before. So for them, maybe less so. So I think it does depend upon the field you're in. And I think, what we can do is really try to promote these software journals and things like PyOpenSci, rOpenSci, and really advocate for them within our, not the immediate RSE community, but to our colleagues within universities, so that more people understand the value of these journals.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think this is one thing I think we need to remember, is we are a community of hundreds, if not thousands. So actually its value is defined by the community. So I think we need to do work to make sure we value them and submit more things to them. Cool. I think the next question is, research software changes and develops over time. Can the JOS article change with the software, or does it represent the software at a fixed point in time?
Mm-hmm. That's a really good question. And I actually don't know the definite answer to that. I think that the JOS article is fixed and it's not updated, but I'm afraid I think that's something I'm going to have to Google and get back to you on that.
Yeah, but my memory, I think, is it's because the paper is a Git repo. I think the repo can evolve. So I remember with one submission, we talked about having it as an evolving paper, but again, I need to check that as well.
The repo can definitely evolve. But the paper itself as published and shown on the JOS website, I'm not sure that can.
Okay. Okay, next question. What do you do to encourage shy researchers who may be afraid of like others seeing their code to submit to JOS?
That is a really, really good question. And I think this idea that of building confidence is really important. So I think we need, if we could maybe encourage them to share their code with somebody that they already have a relationship with, so somebody who they already trust. So as an RSE, you know, if they've came to you, you might be able to, you know, to serve that purpose, to say, you know, well, let me have a look at your code and give them that initial, you know, boost their confidence and just say, you know, you're doing good work, you know, there's improvements to be made, but everyone's continually improving. You know, all the code that I write isn't perfect. I still need to improve the way that I write code. So just kind of, I guess, demonstrating to them that everyone is, I think there's this image to people who, you know, who maybe just started programming. I think they kind of think that everything we do is perfect, you know, that everything we do is without fault. So it's really communicating to them that we're all continually improving all the time. And, you know, if they don't think their work's perfect, well, I don't think my work's perfect either. It's fine. Just get it out there and get feedback on it.
Yeah, I completely agree. Nothing I've done is ever perfect. So yeah, just get it out there and let people talk about it and then improve. You learn from sharing things with other people. Completely agree. Okay, so next we have for code in domains with established computational journals, for example, computational chemistry, is it worth publishing in both JOS and the conventional journal? And is that allowed?
I think, I mean, again, it might depend on the specific journal, but to my mind, it should be allowed because they are assessing different things. So in JOS, we're looking at the software itself, whereas in the more conventional journal, often what's under review is the paper that describes the software. But I think it would depend on the particular conventional journal you have in mind.
Cool, thank you. So penultimate question. Thank you for a motivating talk. I agree. Thank you very much. That was a very motivating talk. Is the Society of RSE supporting JOS in any material or immaterial ways in addition to hosting this talk? Wink.
Mm-hmm. You'll have to tell me, Christina, do you know of any other? I mean, I think there's a lot of people that are both active in the society and associated with JOS, that's for sure.
Yeah, I think you're right there. I agree, but I think it's like societies traditionally have publishing arms. I think, you know, I'm not a trustee and I have no control or knowledge of anything, but I think having a closer link might be interesting. I think there are synergies that comes, I mean, business talking too much, but synergies that could be exploited. Cool. Okay, so we'll move on to the last of the questions, and that's, do you think that publishing something is most valuable if viewed as a process that forces us to make our work understandable and usable by others?
I think that's a really, really good point. Yeah, so it's actually just forces us to almost take a critical look at our own work and assess our own work and look for improvements. And yes, I think that's an excellent point. It definitely does that. And I guess that's the point that I was making, that, you know, in 2016, when I first wrote that code, it was a mess. And then when I knew I wanted to publish to JOS, before I even thought about submitting the code, it took me about a year to sit down and think, right, what do I actually need to do to get it to the state at which I can submit it? So it definitely forced me to make my work more understandable and usable. So I think that's a really good point. Can I also just go back to one of the earlier questions about building confidence? Because I just suddenly thought of something, which is, I just want to promote something, which is Jeremy Cohen and myself are putting on some drop-in sessions, online drop-in sessions for people who would like to get help with their research code. So if you are working with somebody and they might like some informal, friendly feedback, then please look out for our drop-in sessions. So it's called Research Software Drop-in UK. If you put that into Google, it might come up. You could put in Lucy Worley or Jeremy Cohen, and point people towards that as well, and we'll definitely give friendly advice.
Yeah, I agree. It's a very good endeavor. And I've seen links to that also put into the SeptembRSE channel in the Slack as well. And yeah, but that was a really engaging and wonderful talk. I think a perfect way to finish all of the talks for SeptembRSE. So thank you very much, Lucy. And yeah, I can see lots of applause appearing in the chat. So, okay, we're now on to the very, very, very last bit of SeptembRSE. So this is basically my final wrap-up talk. So just give me 2 seconds while I share the screen. It's always fun with these things, having to balance multiple parts. Okay, yep, that has definitely worked. And I think James is going to post the Slido link into the chat if you want to ask questions, and I'll go through some questions at the end of this. And also, I'm going to re-emphasize this many, many times during this talk. There is a feedback survey. Please tell us what you think about SeptembRSE, and James is going to post a link into the chat in that as well. But yes, we've reached the end. Crumbs, week 4 summary, the end of September. Tomorrow is October. The weather has changed since the sort of late sunshine of the summer. And already here in Bristol, it is cold and raining and miserable and dark in the evenings. So yeah, it's been a very long month, and I cannot believe we've got here. So yeah, 99% complete. You only have to listen to me for approximately 30 minutes. Although, as somebody did put in the feedback as I was watching it, I think the question of, do you have anything negative to say about SeptembRSE? And their response was, it's difficult to have something negative to say when you can easily disconnect from the session, which I thought, that's a benefit of online conferences I had not come across before. So yes, it's amazing. We have had 18 days, 36 sessions, 26 talks, 4 discussions, a whole day of RSE worldwide, 6 walkthroughs, 8 workshops, 10 posters, and 5 panels. An incredible amount of material. Over 40 hours of video has been uploaded to YouTube, and this will be uploaded later on this evening as well. Incredible amount. Impossible to edit into parts, as I think people have noticed. We can just put it on half day by half day. But if you do want to edit it, if anyone wants to volunteer to go through the videos and break them out into individual talks, then please get in touch. We will be happy to let you take on that task. So my highlights of this week. This has been a lovely week to finish SeptembRSE with. It's been a very hard job actually choosing the highlights, and I apologize to Lucy because your talk came after I chose. I wasn't able to include that in the choice, but it's fantastic week of talks. So on Monday, the thing I thought that caught my eye the most was the RSE landscape, understanding role diversity across the community, which was run by the SOC RSE trustees. And really what caught my eye was the maturity of the society now. So I remember back to the beginning of RSE, to our first conference where we didn't even think anybody would turn up, and to have gone from there to where we are now, where we have this really good role profiles of potential RSEs and beginning to understand what it means to be an RSE, and the huge diversity of the community, from that we're not trying to pigeonhole it into one type of RSE, but we're very much embracing everybody who could possibly fit into this sort of space. And I thought the Mentimeter, again, you can watch this on the video, but you have the Mentimeter graphs updating in real time as people were sort of voting on the various questions, like where are you based? How do you view yourself? Are you in more research or more central, and other questions? It was very interesting to see that evolve, and the comments, the questions that were coming up in that workshop. So this is definitely something you should pick up and watch, particularly if you're maybe unsure, am I an RSE? Watch this and you'll see you almost certainly are an RSE. It's a very welcoming community. Okay, for Tuesday, this was my hardest actually of all of the days to choose something. Every single thing that happened on Tuesday could have been my highlight of the day. And in particular, the second talk in the afternoon, which was about the R package case study. I'm always going to make that now a must watch in my research group, in my RSE group. And indeed, we have discussions every fortnight. And one of our plans with the discussions is to take the YouTube videos, watch a video for example, for that R package discussion, and then have a discussion in a group about that video for like half an hour. And I think that's going to be a really nice way of using those YouTube videos. But the highlight for me on this day was really Dan Katz's Senior Level RSE Career Paths with an S talk with Dan and his collaborators. The reason, again, I think why this appealed to me, one, I'm old. I think I'm now classed as senior. And it was also this, again, the maturity. So back when we started with RSE, we were just thinking about what is an RSE? How do we even get people to recognize the term and recognize that you could be employed as one of these people? And to now be at a point in 2021 where we have so many RSE groups and actually have really good ideas, really strong, concrete ideas about what an RSE career pathway could look like, and the diversity of that pathway into the product manager, principal, and group leader RSE. And for Dan to convey that, I thought, very eloquently. It showed a great deal of thought, result of a lot of discussion. And again, I think this is something which, again, aspiring RSEs look at, because this is a pathway you could potentially be on, but definitely people who are in senior RSE roles now, we have something to point to in our universities and our research institutes to say, this is actually where things could work, how it could grow. And again, for people in other countries where it's not so developed, point to the UK and say, look, they're beginning to get things, and the US as well, they're beginning to get things in place, they're beginning to know what they're doing. Now, Wednesday, I had to discount all of the things I was involved with that day because I was actually involved in a lot. Somehow it was quite random. And the thing which was my highlight was a surprise, to be honest. It was something we came up with very much at the last minute when we had more discussion topics than we could possibly fit into the conference. And we had a few spare poster boards, and organically this idea appeared of, why don't we just put the discussion topic as on a poster board and let people write whatever they want below it and encourage a kind of asynchronous evolving discussion on these various topics. And we put those up. We had no idea how they were going to turn out. And from the first week, it was like, yes, people seem to be engaging with it. And then Kristen and James were like, yeah, can we do a review of them in the poster session? And the review was fantastic, and it drove more engagement. And I saw people running to the poster boards and adding those bits. And then on Wednesday, yesterday, Kristen gave this fantastic talk at the end of the session where she basically went through all of the 4 boards and highlighted and summarized them with the summary moose that you can see there, giving the takeaways from this sort of organic discussion involving the whole community. Well worth looking at the boards again if you can. And I would say this is something which would probably, even if we go in person, somehow doing these kind of interactive asynchronous discussion boards, I think would be a really cool thing to keep going for the future. Okay, my highlight for today is rather sort of Inception-like, and that's this highlight talk, as you can see, disappearing off into infinity. Why is my highlight my highlight? I'm being rather cruel to choose it. The reason is because it's been a real joy putting these highlights together. There has been so much material that has come out of SeptembRSE. Indeed, when I looked at the feedback, I think the biggest complaint has been there has been way too much and nobody's been able to watch it all, and nobody knows where everything is, which definitely we have to try and address. I've been lucky enough to watch everything. This was effectively an idea where I just wanted to spend the month of September watching lots of RSE material. So somehow people agreed with me and we were able to do it. And these highlight talks have been a joy to put together, but equally, if you're looking for a way of trying to, you haven't been to many sessions, take a look at them. And I do link to some of the highlights of the week, and maybe that's your branch into some of the things that were going on. But I would just re-emphasize, I can't highlight the entire conference. And if I haven't highlighted your talk or presentation, that wasn't because it wasn't good. Everything in this conference was amazing. I was so impressed with the quality of everything we showed. And what's more, the fact that everybody turned up. This was the first RSE conference that I've been involved in organizing where we made no changes to the timetable. Every single presenter turned up, every single presenter presented. Nobody was late. It was just fantastic. So, please do take a look at the highlights and do go through that YouTube library of 40 plus hours of stuff. It's got some real gems in it. So, who came to SeptembRSE? It's been a huge month, massive conference, larger than we expected. We were thinking maybe 100 to 150 people might be interested in it. But in the end, we sold 246 tickets, 196 to SOC RSE members. And we believe that people have renewed their membership potentially because of this, and 50 to non-members. 67 of the tickets were bought after SeptembRSE started. For an in-person conference, you can't buy tickets after it started. In this case, it's online. You can buy whenever you wished in the first 3 weeks. And we are very happy that 67 people were engaged enough with what was going on that they decided to buy into the conference. We had 246 tickets sold, but of course we gave free day tickets to people. We gave committee tickets, sponsor tickets, volunteer tickets, RSE worldwide tickets, and we've actually emailed out over 343 tickets to this event. Again, way more than we expected. And while people have been coming in dribs and drabs, sort of typically 20 to 40 people per session, I've been looking at the names and it's been different people each time. And it's been interesting with this conference that it has been almost like a buffet and people have been taking small bits of it that they like rather than trying to attend all of it. Now, in terms of the ticket holders who purchased tickets or who was emailed a ticket, we asked for a diversity and accessibility form. 44% of ticket holders filled this in. 80% of the community self-identified as RSEs, which I think is good. It's got a good balance there between the main audience, but also people who are not RSEs who are also interested in attending. What I really like, and what we always strive to do at the conferences, is 22% of first timers. So people who've not been to an RSE conference before. What I really love about this community is we're always renewing. We're not putting up a gate and saying, we are the community and you stay away. We're continually bringing new people in, which I think is fantastic. We had 24 nationalities represented, of which 67%, 2/3 from the UK. The rest was like a long tail and sort of like 4% German, 3% Australian, but an amazing range of nationalities represented at this conference. We had 21%, so just over a fifth of our community self-identifying as being from a marginalized community. Now, obviously, we need to do much more to widen participation in the conferences and widen participation in the RSE community, but it is good that at least we have 1/5 of the community feeling welcome, and we want to make sure that everybody feels welcome to all of our events. In terms of the gender split, we inherit, I think, a little bit of a very biased gender split, but we're always striving to do better. So we have 66% of people identify as male, 22% female, 1.3 non-binary, and 10.7 unspecified. So again, it's not great, it could be better, and we must do more to make sure that we have a much more diverse and much more balanced conference. And then in terms of the age split, again, we have very much like most of the attendees, so 80% fit into the 25 to 44 age bracket, and that I think represents kind of where RSE came from. And also the fact that many people are post-PhD, and we should ask questions, do we need to be reaching down below sort of like the PhD level and get people who are basically in undergrad or even pre-undergrad? And again, we have quite a low number of people at sort of the higher age brackets. And again, is that because we're looking internally in the community, or do we need to sort of widen out and make sure we catch the senior people as well? So feedback, I will keep reiterating this all the way through. So many questions I saw in the AGM and heard on chat and others is RSE 22 going to be online or is it going to be in person? And the answer is, we don't know. We don't know because nobody's going to make a decision until you tell us what you want your conference to be. It is your conference. This means you need to tell us what you want. So the way you do this is via the feedback form. So you can do it on the conference information system by clicking on contact and feedback details and then clicking on the fill in the feedback survey, or you can click on the link at the bottom. And I think James has put it into the chat as well. And I believe it was emailed to everybody as well just before lunchtime. Please, please fill this feedback in. It is absolutely vital to enable whoever is putting together RSE 22 to do the job that makes a conference that you want to attend. And it will only take 1 minute of your time. 1 minute to get a fantastic RSE 22 for me is a really good exchange of value and cost. And again, you can do it in the virtual conference center as well by going to the envelope. Now the peek behind the curtain. So putting on a conference is a huge amount of work. I've been involved in 4 of the conferences in various roles. This is the second one that I've done as a sort of a chair or co-chair. And what you don't see with these conferences, whether they be in person and last for a couple of days or online and lasting for a month, which was madness, you don't see the huge, huge amount of work that goes in to make this work. So it was actually back at the middle of April where I sort of rocked up and presented to the society trustees and said, hey, wouldn't it be great to do a 1 month long conference and do lots of talks and spread everything out so nothing overlapped and kind of like make this like a buffet style conference. And for some reason they said, yes, that is not a mad thing to do. Even though running my conference for 1 month, I definitely now concede that was a mad thing to do. And probably no one will ever run a 1 month conference ever again. but it was worth doing once. From that proposal and that approval, we then launched officially with our launch talk, if people saw it, on the 26th of April, to then get in a conference committee. I am so pleased people bought into this idea, and the conference committee volunteered and actually joined in, and we had our first welcome committee sort of event on the 14th of May. From there, as you can see on the bottom, there is this relentless weekly schedule of committee meetings for everything that we needed to do. And I thank the committee so much for turning up to these meetings, and also for adapting to a style which was very much a pre-filled minutes, asynchronous management style that meant that everybody was able to contribute when they could, but it also meant that it was a different way of operating in terms of how you manage and organize things. And I thank the committee for sort of adapting to this and for engaging with it. And it meant that even as a committee member, if you could only do one day's worth of work organizing the conference, I thank you, because that was one day less that other people had to do. And again, if you're thinking about RSE22 and volunteering, you don't have to volunteer the whole time. You can volunteer just for short periods. Now, that conference committee did a great piece of work. We went from the 18th of May, which is when we first convened, and 10 days later, we put out the call for proposals, which I think is a record for all of our conferences. We needed to do this so early because we wanted to make sure there was time for everybody to submit to the conference and to hold a submitters mentoring event to really encourage new people into the conference venue. We then had all of the technology to put together to do the reviewing and the refereeing because we had no money. It was an online conference. So we basically decided to do everything bespoke. And hey, we're software engineers. We can write the software to do this. And that meant that by the 2nd of July, with just sort of 4 or 5 committee meetings, we were in place. We'd assembled a team of reviewers to do this rapid review period. And you notice the reviewing was completed in effectively 10 days. And I really thank the reviewers for the very fast turnaround on the reviews. We had at least 2 reviews for every single submission. It was all anonymous, double blind on both sides. And the review quality, the reviewers were really kind. They did a fantastic job reviewing and letting us choose really high quality submissions. And again, I apologize to everyone who was not able to present at this conference. We have a lot of stuff. We only had a limited amount of time and sessions, but the quality bar was really high. And if your thing was not accepted, that was effectively just because the quality bar was so high, but please do submit again next year. From that point of the reviews coming in, we then had this sort of 2-week period where we had to do all of the decision-making processes, and we had to just basically work out that we create a balanced conference, do all of the diversity work, so unanonymize after decisions are made, and then check the diversity of all of the submissions. So we had a balanced conference, and then get all of the decisions out in, again, 2-week period for the end of July. So we gave enough time to all of the presenters to be able to put together their materials. We were very clear that we didn't want to go too much into the school holidays and the summer holidays, and that's why we tried to get everything out as quickly as we could before the summer. It also enabled us to open our ticket sales and then do the timetabling. I was frankly terrified about the timetabling. So this idea of fitting everything to a month and trying to make sure that everybody could come and present at the time that they wanted. And the way it turned out was actually the timetabling was remarkably easy because of the fantastic team doing it. And as I said, everybody turned up to their sessions, and so it was great. We could then prep the tech to do the timetable, publish it on the 18th of August. And then it was then this sort of run into the conference where we just prep the venue and spend too long drawing artwork for the conference venue. So it's a lot of work. Massive thanks to the committee for doing all of this. Massive thanks to the huge numbers of meetings, the huge amount of time that was put into it. And as a hint, I would say to the trustees of the society and anyone thinking about doing RSE22, starting a conference in the end of April, May was way too late. And I would say definitely start planning RSE22 in December. And I do invoke the rule, the unspoken rule that we have with conferences, is that if you've chaired or co-chaired a conference for the RSE Society, you are not involved in any way whatsoever with the following year's conference. So I am not going to be involved in RSE22. Now, typically at this time, if this was an in-person conference, we would bring the committee up on stage and we would thank them for all of their hard work. And it's been a huge amount of work. And normally we'd give them a box of chocolates. This is a virtual conference, so here is a virtual box of chocolates. I apologize. There's nothing else we could do, but I would ask the society, please consider sending out some thanks or something to the committee members because they have been incredible during this last 6 months. So I really want to sort of talk to the committee members basically by name. I don't just want to be this like, thank you everybody, and that's it. Huge thanks to the team who put together all of the talks and walkthroughs. So huge thanks to Chris, to Andrew, and to Georgie. They've done an incredible job dealing with, I think it was like 30 plus talks and walkthroughs, talking to everyone who was presenting, timetabling and doing all of that work. Thank you so much for doing this. I hope in the chat we can see some thanks going on as well. I'll actually just have a quick check in the chat. Round of applause for Chris, Andrew, and Georgie. Thanks too for the workshops to Tim, Sadie, and Jens. Again, there were 8 workshops put on. Workshops are one of the hardest things to do in an RSE conference. And my first role in 2016 was as workshops chair, and they're really, really difficult to put the workshops on. And Tim, Jens, and Sadie have done a fantastic job. Again, thank you. We've had 8 wonderful workshops because of your help. Thanks to James and to Kristen for the panels and discussions. Panels were a new addition in our last conference. Discussions were a completely new addition for this conference. And basically, we just gave them the idea of this is what we want the discussion to look like. And James and Kristen ran with it. They made the discussions, for me, my favorite thing of the entire conference. And then they created this idea of the discussion posters, which again was my sort of surprise sleeping hit of the conference as well. So thank you very much, James, and to Kristen. I want to say thank you to Gareth, Sandra, and Shashank for RSE Worldwide. To have a one-day international meeting, bringing together pretty much most of the continents, except Antarctica, in the world into one place, and to talk about RSE, and to have people contributing from around the world in one whole one-day event. I think that was something we could only ever do online. And I know that that session has kickstarted discussions about maybe doing RSE Worldwide as a separate thing that happens more regularly. Thank you, Gareth, Sandra, and Shashank, for really making that work and basically doing all of the work as a kind of organizing a mini conference within a conference. It was fantastic. For the posters, I want to thank Amar and John. Posters in an online conference are really challenging to do because how do they fit? How do they work? How do you encourage people to even submit a poster and present it? And Amar and John did a fantastic job actually bringing the posters to the conference and really making them part of the virtual conference center. Thank you very much for your help with this. And then we have many other helpers. The conference committee was huge, I think 25 plus people. Pete, you did a great job organizing all the volunteers and organizing our blended program. We were very ambitious in April, thinking we could do blended where we'd run lots of sessions at various universities, but unfortunately Delta kind of put a kibosh on most of the things we planned. We were not able to do what we wanted. So, we only had one blended event, but it was great. And thank you, Pete, for organizing all of that and for reaching out and all of the changes that were going on with this. Thank you, Alison, for our website. So our website was vital for basically getting the word out, handling all of the calls, being the point of contact. And Alison, you built an amazing website that enabled us to stay up to date and was rapidly updated. And we were changing things at sort of late in the evening and early in the morning. And while we didn't expect that to be changed, except for work hours, you were changing it pretty much instantly. So thank you very much. For diversity and accessibility, I want to thank Shashank. He is our diversity and accessibility chair and really stepped up and made sure we had very concrete, well-formed procedures, policies, and that we thought about this through the entire conference. And thank you for handling the parts where we got some of the colors wrong when we sort of did our first conference information system. And thank you for being there through the entire conference to handle anything that came up. And I believe I've not seen any code of conduct violations or any complaints in this conference. I think we've done hopefully a good job of making this an open and welcoming space. Thank you to Chris for publicity, particularly during the early stages of the sort of SeptembRSE process and getting all of the tweets out and putting together lots of pictures and little boards and dealing with all the things we needed to communicate. It was an extremely helpful thing to do. And again, I think helped bring in the community we had. And again, thank you to our co-chair, Martin, who basically kept me honest. So I was bouncing off with millions of ideas. And it was very useful to have Martin there to be able to just rein it in and make sure we could deliver something deliverable. And again, the committee is even larger than that. There's a huge committee putting this together. From society, we were very happy to have the trustees help us as well. So Kirsty, who was our treasurer, and Matt, who again, treasurer of the society, they helped with obviously the conference finances, the ticketing, integrating systems. thank you very much for that. From Mozgan and Fuzan, basically our advisors. They provide vital advice to us throughout the process because this is a formal society event. We have to follow the processes, and they're very helpful with that, and also giving advice and comments about our plans as we're going through. And then, of course, at the bottom, we cannot forget Claire. Claire formerly was handling sponsorship, but also did everything that was kind of in the background, as Claire always does, as her wonderful self. And thank you very much, Claire, for everything you did to make sure that the SeptembRSE conference was a success. But one sort of extra thing I did want to say is somebody really did step up in the conference committee. And I think all of the rest of the conference committee would agree with us on this. And that is Kristen. Kristen put a huge amount of time and effort into really bringing the conference together under a single brand. What you can see here are her initial graphics of what the SeptembRSE could have looked like. So these are the things that didn't make it out into the public. And Kristen's endeavors in making sure that we had a consistent look, that we embraced this 8-bit theme, and then translating that to the store and all the merchandise. I mean, Kristen was giving personalized merchandise to individuals who asked. That's raised a huge amount of money for the society, but also I think helped make the conference feel like a unified thing rather than just a collection of talks. There's been an underlying theme throughout the entire event. So thank you, Kristen, for all of your efforts, all of your help. And I know you're not watching this now, but people thank you now, and you can see it on the video. And then finally, people I've not named, all of the reviewers who turned around the review so quickly, all our sponsors who provided us with the amounts of money to enable us to put this online conference on, the presenters, so many of you presenting, all turning up on time, all dealing with a different way of presenting. Thank you very much for presenting amazing and interesting events and sort of submissions. Thank you to our volunteers who were helping out in GatherTown, to the session chairs who are basically making sure that every single session was working. And finally, thank you to everyone who has come to this conference and for engaging with it and really making this a great community event. It's been a joy for this last month being part of this. And then you saw a huge number of people involved in RSE, in SeptembRSE, RSE 21. RSE 22 needs you. The only way RSE 22 will go ahead is if you put the effort into organizing it. You need to volunteer. If you want a conference that is for you, then step up and help build it. It's only through this hard work of a large number of people giving the little bits of time they can whenever they can that these events happen. And it's by having you take part and contribute that you will get an event which sort of continues this trajectory of growth and this trajectory of getting stronger and better and more enjoyable. And again, if you don't have time to join RSE 22, then do fill in the feedback survey, as James will put in the chat again, to at least let us know what you want from your conference next year. Okay, so that's all of the thanks. And I can see lots of thanks in the chat down here. We're now on to the prize giving. So the prize giving, hopefully people can still be around for this. So we have the 3 moose for the Elsa's Flight winner moose by mail. So here is the first of the 3 moose. And off we go around. Where is it going to end up with? It will eventually get there. Come on, don't freeze on me now in the last talk. And Ian Gotham, congratulations, you have won a moose. Okay, the next spin, he'll be our second moose. So the penultimate moose of the conference. It's very sad. Actually, we've given out, this must be what, 13th, 14th, 12th moose? I can't even count now, my brain's gone. D. Wilby, congratulations, you have won the penultimate moose. But who is going to win the last moose? The last moose of the whole of SeptembRSE. 4 weeks of moose. Crumbs. So the last moose that is coming, here we go. And it's gone to D. Silcock. Congratulations, you have won the last moose of SeptembRSE. And I've seen people who are going to name their moose. Do have a look at that in the SeptembRSE channel. And people who have been putting their moose on Twitter, please do follow that and do sort of tag the SeptembRSE hashtag if you do that, so we can follow it after the conference. Okay, so our next competition was the poster prize. So we had a poster prize that was open to the 3 posters which were submitted to SeptembRSE and that were displayed throughout the conference. So 3 posters were Psychic Surgery, What's New, How to do AI Bioscience Research During a Pandemic Using RSE Skills, and LuaTech using LuaTech for Elegant Scientific Type Setting. We had an anonymous vote amongst the committee, and they were voting through this week, having viewed all of the posters. And based on that vote, we had a clear winner. And the winner of the Oracle Poster Prize is, there we are, Psychic Surgery, What's New by Stephen Thompson. Congratulations. The Society trustees will be in touch with you, and the prize will be any item that you would like to choose from the merchandise store from SeptembRSE, so t-shirt or a bag or something like that. And they'll be in contact with you to ask you what you want and your address, and then they'll arrange for that to be delivered to you. So please wait for their email. Okay, the prize that I think everyone's been waiting for, the Oracle Cryptic Code Treasure Hunt. This grew legs. And yeah, this grew a lot of legs as it went through. We started the treasure hunt. Just make sure you can see my mouse. Yes, you can. This was the clue to decode the text in the coin. By the very last coin in the treasure hunt, this is the clue to decode the text in the coin. So the first thing I want to say is anybody who decoded the 20 coins, congratulations. This was a really hard treasure hunt, and you did an amazing job being able to write programs that could understand this. Also, the coins changed. They got more transparent and they got smaller as the weeks went by. And the treasure hunt evolved from being something where you were just finding treasure to actually where you had to interact with characters on the board. So dash and dot and dash, Dr. Note, Snowball the Evil Kitten, and find objects like the trash bin of doom and the brain in the jar. And of course, it went not just a visual treasure hunt, but you also had to find bits of sound within the chip tunes that we've been playing in all of the sessions. You had to go to the jukebox and listen to that as well. And find hidden things at nighttime. If you've not seen the conference center at nighttime, you've not seen the Moonlight Heart Bridge that enables you to reach the Castle of Doom and enter the trapdoor there, which you needed to do to get one of the coins. A particular shout out to the person who made a typo error on this clue with the explosion at the end that meant the coins exploded as fireworks into the sky. They didn't realize that because they did a typo and they thought it was related to the explosion on the merchandise shop. And I wish now that I had made the explosion on the merchandise shop part of the treasure hunt, but I didn't. But I would have loved to have done that if I had thought about it. And thank you for letting me know about that. Now, through the treasure hunt, I've had many people talking to me, and it's a great way to get to the castle tomorrow. I was wondering, like, people were sort of doing the treasure hunt in different ways. And I love the way lots of teams got together and lots of teams are coming up with innovative ways of being able to do the treasure hunt. Now, some teams, innovative ways, were not quite the way I was envisioning when the treasure hunt was put together. And of course, RSEs, what do we do? We look for the most efficient way of solving the problem, not the pathway that's put in front of us. You know, we're not following the traditional academic pathway. We've hacked our own pathway together. So I do celebrate and applaud all of the teams that did a non-obvious way of solving the treasure hunt. So I had some requests for people to ask what were these non-obvious ways. Well, one of the ones that some people noticed is I didn't encrypt things strongly because I didn't want to make it too difficult. And so they ran well-known plain text attacks on the coins, and so able to decrypt them without having to talk to Dr. Note or visit the other objects. And while that was perfectly fine and valid thing to do, it kind of meant you weren't taking part in, say, the music parts of the treasure hunt or the finding the object. So we thought that was a little bit, it was not the way we would have wanted to do it, but you know, we really applaud you for having gone down that route. And, you know, it was a very good way of doing it. There was someone who actually was able to generate their own hash functions to handle all of the little objects like the cake and the fish and the brain. And so what it meant was they didn't actually have to visit those objects. And instead, what they could do is actually write code like this, which was cake, get title from ID T10, and thus get the sort of the codes and hashes much more quickly. I really applaud this. I thought this was very, very cool. And yeah, very ingenious that you did this. And then the most ingenious, this team, very, very ingenious. I really do applaud their cleverness. GatherTown has a global maps object, which you can find by using DevTools when you look at the browser and basically extract it from the console. Within the maps object, there's the objects object, and that lists all of the objects on the map, including their position and the message, the piece of text. And that means instead of having to look for the coins, you could just look it up in the JavaScript object. They found those objects on Sunday because they have to put them in beforehand to make sure they're tested. And then because they knew it was a simple XOR encoding and could do a plain text attack, they could basically decrypt all of the coins before they were officially released without having to go and visit Gather Town at all. Very, very clever. But we decided that given that the coins that they submitted were on Sunday before we officially released the coins on Monday, this is why we decided that this was not a route that we could go forward. So the 3 teams, they wanted to let us know which order they came in, even though we're not saying they're eligible for the prize. So the order is at number 1, it's No Remorse, who submitted their coins at 10:30 at night on Sunday, which we did not want to encourage. We wanted people to do this during the working day. Heart 23, they submitted their coins again before they were officially released, between 8 o'clock and 9 o'clock on Monday morning. And then RW got them in between 9:23 and 9:25 on Monday morning as well. Congratulations to the 3 of you, 3 teams. You did a great job. It was very, very clever, and kind of like you are the clever winners of the Oracle Cryptic Code treasure hunt, but that does not come with a prize. Okay, so for the people who ran around the board and followed the pathway that we had expected them to follow, this is the order that we have. So effectively, there was not that much change as we went through, but what I will highlight is in number 5, we have Leicester, and number 4, we have Peter Hill, and there was only 10 minutes separating them. And actually, Leicester had put in all of the coins except for the last one before Peter had put in his first coin. And it was just as Leicester was about to put in his last coin that, 10 minutes before Peter finished all of them. And so, yeah, Peter got place number 4. So the top 3, now we've been waiting for this. In number 3, the team, so the top 3 last time was Matt, HMS Hartree, and Spinnaker. So number 3 now, falling 1 place, it's HMS Hartree. So the top 2, is it going to be Matt, or is it going to be Spinnaker? Now, what I'll say with this is, again, this was a very tightly fought race. There was just 14 minutes between these 2. And again, it was exactly as what happened between Peter and Leicester. Effectively, the person in number 2, they submitted the last 4 coins, then had a big gap before they submitted the final coin. And it was in that gap of about 14 minutes that the number 1 place just snuck in and got all of their coins in place. So at number 2, I'm afraid falling 1 place from number 1 is Matt Williams. And that means, of course, the winner of the Oracle Cryptic Code treasure hunt is Spinnaker. Congratulations. I saw from the things you were confirming with me through the entire 4 weeks how hard you worked and what you were doing. And it was great that you really enjoyed the treasure hunt, and great to all of the players that you really enjoyed this. And just like with the poster prize, the prize is basically an item from the SeptembRSE merchandise shop of your choice. So again, the trustees will be in touch with you to basically say, do you want to have a bag or do you want to have a t-shirt? I believe there are 2 of you on the team. So it's like 1 each for both of you. So 2 things. And yeah, congratulations. Very well done. So with that is everything to do with SeptembRSE. So I'm going to have a look and see if there are any questions that have popped up in the Slido. Just give me 2 seconds here. Oh, there are questions. Okay, in that case, I will do these questions. Again, James will put it into the chat to say, if anyone wants to add any more questions, just let me share this. Okay, so I always forget to mute on the 2 screens. Cool. So thank you very much, Chris, for everything done. Thank you very much for the person who said that. It was, yeah, this was a lot of fun. And I said, this was my way of basically having a month of enjoying lots of RSE activities. And as the feedback has said, I mean, we've definitely taken on board 4 weeks is far too long for a conference. And I very much expect that there will never again be a 4-week conference in RSE, mainly because no one else would be mad enough to try and put this together. It's been a long September.
Hi, Christopher. I've been asked to jump in and say thank you, real big thank you to you from all of the committee. So this was from the committee, but I just thought we should say a personal, really big thanks to you because you've done such a huge amount of work on this conference. You've been at pretty much every session, every day. You wrote the conference information system. You created the Oracle Cryptic coin treasure hunt. So it has been amazing. So thank you very much on behalf of the whole committee. And I think all attendees would really like to thank you as well. So thanks.
Well, thank you very much. As it's been a total joy putting this all together. It's and as I say, somebody please volunteer to do RSE 22. It is it's a lot of fun doing conferences. I've done 4 of them now. It's a very enjoyable, takes a lot of time, but it's very rewarding. And yeah, please somebody volunteer to do RSE 22 and start the process of running the conference in December, because then it will not be so rushed.
And please, can you answer my question? Because I really want to know what your favorite chiptune was.
Cool. I will move on to that one then. So my favorite chiptune. There is only one that can be the favorite. It's the one that got stuck in my head, and that's Catnip. Essentially because it has the playful thing of putting in occasional cat meows and then finishes with a dog woof. But I have now heard every single one of these songs at least 30 times. And I suspect I will not be listening to any of them for a very, very long time. And if ever I walk around and I have these chiptunes playing, it will probably give me some kind of nervous breakdown, triggering flashback, which I might have to report. Maybe put this on a thing of saying, please don't play chiptunes in my company. But yeah, the Catnip was the best one. And then thank you, Kim, such a fantastic event, significant view. But yeah, it was good to meet you as well, Kim. It was it was lovely to meet. And also, I think this is really why we do these conferences. I remember my first conference was very much turning up and it's like crumbs. I belong, I have a home, this is who I am. And we really do want to make sure that we produce conferences where we give that, it's a very emotional thing, that feeling that you belong somewhere. And I'm very pleased that this conference has really helped provided you with that. And then can we keep the jukebox? It's on GitHub. It's on GitHub and it's never going away. And indeed, in much the same way we have the with the GatherTown Virtual Conference Center, that's never going away as well. GatherTown lets you leave that up permanently. The YouTube channel with all of SeptembRSE is also not going away. So essentially, even though this is at the end of the conference and it's been a very fun September and a very long event, it is all online and it will all remain online until Google disappears, which I suspect will be a very long time in the future. So please revisit the talks, revisit the sessions, watch the videos, play the music on the jukebox again, but enjoy your last 9 hours or 12 hours, 18 hours, wherever you are in the world of September. And thank you for SeptembRSE.